Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. Listen, can I tell you a little secret? I'm going to tell you a little secret anyway. You are smart. In fact, I would argue you're unbelievably smart. And it's not just because you knew that my name is Russ Joy and this is the Russ Joy Show. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. No, you're just smart. You're all very intelligent people, and I'm glad that you're here because we have a lot to talk about today. It is a marvelous Monday. I pushed back the start of the show today a little bit, just a little bit, to accommodate our dear friends over at Fightin' Words, part of the Joy Media Network. You can go over to their YouTube channel, Fightin' Words, or the Joy Media channel, as they do their show Mondays and Fridays, breaking down the Phillies. And so they went at a different time today, and so I said, all right, I'm going to accommodate. I'm going to do the thing here. I'm going to do the guy who runs the show thing. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to push my show back a little bit. So thanks for finding the show. Thanks for waiting. And I saw that there was a nice viewer number going on over at Fightin' Words, which is always a good thing. Now, the reason that I'm excited for today is because, I don't know if you happen to notice this or not. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I assume that almost all of you did. Hell of a weekend for your team, your town, your Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, it was an astounding weekend for the Phillies. They very likely walked away with what was deserved. 2 out of 3 wins against a previously unbeaten LA Dodgers team. There's a legitimate case to be made that they could have very much been in contention to have a sweep in that series. And we can point to Aaron Nola. We can point to the issues with the long ball. We may point in that general direction at some point this morning, but that's really not what it's about. And we're not going to necessarily say that Jay Romano is an absolute failure as a human being and deserves to be jettisoned into the sun. We probably won't go that far today. But if you just look at this series on aggregate, we can definitely say the Phillies look like they very much belong. And, Jesus Luzardo, real deal. I think we're definitely at that point at this point, right? Jesus Luzardo has looked fantastic through 2 starts. Nola, a little bit of a concern. Christopher Sanchez, decent effort. Now, we will get into some of the, do we want to call it unfair criticism of Aaron Nola relative to other guys in this rotation? We'll talk about it. I mean, listen, I have to be fair here, right? I'm nothing if not fair. You can look at heads up the Aaron Nola stats versus the Christopher Sanchez stats from over the weekend against the Dodgers, and you can pretty much line them up and say, Nola probably gave you a better start. And yet, people are significantly down on Nola again after his most recent start, more so than they are with Christopher Sanchez. So then you come down to well, why is that the case? We're going to get there as well. Plus, Edmundo Sosa is an absolute stud. Guy just keeps performing, just keeps delivering. I'm not annoyed, all right? But I am kind of looking at some other guys on this lineup saying, you're supposed to be a little bit better than this. And I'm looking at that tall, lanky third baseman, Alec Bohm, and I'm saying to myself, I don't know. Did homeboy get a little bit in his feelings because of being, rumored to maybe be in some trade negotiations? Because he didn't look like the guy that he did leading up to the All-Star break last year. That is for sure. So we'll get there. And then I have some hockey stuff. I do, because I put out a tweet over the weekend, and I thought about it, and I stepped away from it, and I still feel very strongly about it, so we'll talk about it a little bit later on. There's a very concerning trend here since very early January with both Travis Konecny and Owen Tippett. I want to bring all of you into it in case you missed the little thread I put together. It was a pretty packed thread. I was using up the character limits on a few of those tweets, but we're going to talk about that. Plus, Alex Ovechkin, my friends. Ovechkin breaks the goal record. I wish that he would have done it at home. I'll get into why. But a really cool moment. If you're a fan of the sport, if you are a fan of sports in general, you now get to say that, oh yeah, we got to watch Alex Ovechkin break what was previously viewed to be an unbreakable record. And I have to tell you, I was truly impressed. The guy's astounding. So we're going to get to that a little bit later on. But first, before we do, on the same episode, we're going to go over to the comments because I've seen people, they're commenting over on YouTube. Don't forget, if you're watching on X, you have to click the video first, go into Periscope mode, then you can drop a comment. If you're over on Facebook, you are like the few, the proud, but by all means, you can comment as well. YouTube is the place to go on the Russ Joy Show YouTube account or the Joy Media account. Remember, it's the Joy Media one with the black and white logo and like around 190 subscribers, not the one of the guy from, I think he's from Singapore, who has like 146,000 subscribers. That's not me. If that were me, we'd be having a very different conversation. The studio would look significantly different. That's not me, but kudos to that guy. I don't know what his content is, but good on him. All right. Chris Freed over on YouTube says, Aaron Nola is from Louisiana. You would expect him to be tossing spicy jambalaya, not fat meatballs across the plate. His tanking velocity is very bad. Yeah, his fastball, I believe, is down a full mile per hour from his average a year ago. And it's still early in the season, and guys ramp up and all that, but, like, it's concerning. I find Aaron Nola to just be a deeply concerning human being, a deeply concerning player. And honestly, it's at the point now where I don't know if so much of the anger around Aaron Nola is because we're just exhausted by the guy and we're exhausted by watching him serve up so many balls over the fence. I mean, I brought this up last week. Last year, he tied for the Major League lead with 31 home runs allowed. Or was it the NL? Either way, he was tied at the top of either the NL or Major League Baseball. I think it was MLB. It might have been National League. Doesn't matter. Keep contradicting myself. Somebody can find it in the comments. But he gave up 31 home runs last year. And now through 2 starts, what is he giving, 4? This is bad. Like, there's no way to spin it. It's almost inconceivable that for a guy who has been sold to us for so long as being a player who has the ability to go out and throw you Cy Young caliber stuff or has Cy Young caliber stuff in his arsenal, the fact that he just continues to implode the way that he does. Now, listen, I've been trying to come up with a comparison for what Aaron Nola is. I really have. And I remember, like, back before Harry Kalas passed away, I remember Harry Kalas having a thing about how Ryan Howard striking out so much was okay because it's better to strike out and that be the only out than worry about putting the ball in play and perhaps getting doubled off or whatever. Maybe it was Harry had the other side. It doesn't matter. But the idea was, like, Ryan Howard struck out a lot. And so it was a very isolated play. But because he struck out at the rate that he did, and because he didn't put the ball in play, and because he wasn't flying out, because he wasn't making a field player have to actually make a play on the ball, it reduces the amount of variance that can exist within the field. It reduces the likelihood, obviously, of an infielder bobbling a ball that maybe a guy gets to second base, or maybe a guy who is on third ends up scoring. Maybe there's an error. Maybe there's a bad path taken to a ball in the outfield and it ends up hitting the fence. Like, whatever it is, if you are so limited in scope that, like, I don't know, 150, 200 of these plate appearances are taken by you not putting the ball in play, it does adversely affect the team because there are other things that could happen. Now, in fairness, it does take a double play off the table, but, like, that's about the only negative outcome that you're taking off the table. With Nola, it's not quite as bad, but when I watch Nola pitch, I go, okay, he might not give up a ton of hits, but the ones that he does go over the fence, and they're the ones that happen to count. And so it's like if Nola could just reduce the home runs, he probably only gives up 1 run this weekend. Maybe he gives up 2. But it's always that there's that one dumb pitch that gets left over the plate and gets deposited into the seats, and you go, it's not like he's getting batted around. A lot of times it's not like he's getting batted around. It's not as if he's allowing 4, 5, 6 base runners an inning and he's just getting shellacked. It's, he put together 2 really good outs in a row. He embarrasses a guy, gets out on his front foot, and, like, good on you, Aaron Nola, and then he leaves something up, and it ends up bringing in 2 runs. That, to me, is the frustration. It's like, if you could just somehow, and you can't because the guy is who he is at this point, but if you could somehow get that guy to stop giving up home runs, he would be a lot less frustrating of a pitcher to watch, and yet we just don't have the ability to put up with it. Now, again, Nola's frustrating. I find him to be maybe one of the most frustrating pitchers I have watched in 2 decades. And at the same time, it's like, I understand to an extent why the Phillies thought he was a good guy to bring back. Because if you could fix the home run issue, you have a significantly better pitcher. You don't want to see him go off to another team and that Cy Young caliber stuff gets aligned with whatever goes on up between his ears, especially during those fourth innings, the Rav fourth innings, as people like to say, the biggest battle in sports is Aaron Nola versus the Rav fourth. It's really frustrating. And yet, he only gave up 3 runs. And so if you go into the Dodgers series and you say to yourselves, hey, what is it that you want to get out of Aaron Nola? Would you take a quality start and 3 earned runs? Would that be okay? You'd say, hell yeah, sign me up for it. And yet, by virtue of Nola giving up the long balls, and by virtue of the fact that that also happened to be the game the Phillies bats just went silent, it feels a lot worse than it probably was. Now, I also think that there's another part of why people get so frustrated with Aaron Nola, if I may. And I took this on a much longer track than I intended on. But, there's one other piece to this. And I was listening to Fightin' Words this morning, and they were talking about, the idea that, could it be that people associate Aaron Nola with a losing period of time in Phillies history, and that's why they're so frustrated with him? And I can only speak for myself. I don't think that's it. I think the reason that people get so frustrated with Aaron Nola is because he was a multi-time opening day starter, and for better or worse, that is a big part of your expectations as a fan. The guy who gets the ball in the opening game is the one that you consider to be the ace of your staff. And so when you see that multiple times, you think, all right, this guy who we've heard about coming up through the system, this is a guy that we have high expectations for. You see what he does, all of that. You start to think, all right, is Aaron Nola going to become the ace of the staff? And if so, how ace of an ace will he be? Will he be an ace of a bad team where he's probably a number 2 or a number 3 on another team? There were comparisons being made at certain points in time that is Aaron Nola perhaps going to be able to be like the heir apparent? Is he going to be the spiritual successor to like a Cliff Lee or a Roy Halladay level ace? And you put those things together, and then you see the movement this guy has on his pitches. You see the repertoire. You hear guys like JT Realmuto talk about how, Aaron Nola thinks through these at-bats. He's a really bright guy. You put all those things together, your expectations end up here. And in fairness, I think Aaron Nola is probably a number 2 or a number 3 starter on a really good rotation. He happens to find himself at number 3 right now. His expectations should probably be somewhere around here. But they're up here. And even though we've seen inconsistencies over the years, I still think that people haven't come down from here enough. And so even if you've only made it to here, your expectations are still higher than what the reality should be. And all of this is to say the guy had a decent enough performance over the weekend. But it did happen to be the only game that you lost to the Dodgers. Now, in fairness, they almost blew another game due to, sweet baby boy Jay Romano, who looks absolutely atrocious. But we're going to get back to him in a little bit because I was happy. I was encouraged post-game because he had some comments about needing to get it right. And I love when a player takes accountability. So we will come back to that in a little bit. But I want to go back out to the comments here and see where everybody else's head is at. Reed DeFord over on YouTube says, what a glorious weekend for the Phils. Jim Cochran, Phils win 2 of 3 from the all-world Dodgers. World Series or bust. Remember that thing I just said about the expectations with Aaron Nola? Let's not go too crazy. I love a good series win early in the season. I love a very strong early season win against a team like the Dodgers that are very much being viewed as a World Series favorite. I love it, but I'm also not going to overinflate the importance of it. I think you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment if you do. JH says, get rid of the chip man. Also, hi, Russ. Hello, JH. Chris Freed says, Jordan Romano is like a margin trader this morning. He knows that he's cooked and that it's over. He stays until he gets that call that he knows is coming soon. Romano is a concern. We're going to get back to him in a second. Chris Freed says the two shows should not overlap, Russ, about this and Fighting Words. I totally agree. I have to talk to those guys. I think it's actively just not smart. But we're all very busy people. Jamie Rollo says, time to cut bait on another terrible sighting in Jordan Romano. Do we call him Romano? Do we call him like Ray Romano? Is it Everybody Hates Jay? You know, we had Everybody Loves Raymond. There's Everybody Hates Chris. Do we now go to like Everybody Hates Jay until he figures it out? Because like in fairness, Jay Romano's not a bad pitcher. He's having a terrible start to the season with the Phillies, but like historically, not a terrible pitcher, and like is a guy that there is probably decent enough reason to believe was, not gonna totally suck. Now, in fairness, last year with Toronto, he had bad numbers, but prior to that, he had an ERA around like 2 for multiple years. He's not necessarily a horrible pitcher. But man, when it rains, it pours. And so far this season, albeit limited games, he's made it into 5 games. He's got a 15.75 ERA. I'm pretty sure that's bad. I think that's bad. That's bad. He's only pitched 4 innings across those 5 games, and he's got his ass lit up. Now, we could sit back and say, well, hopefully Jay Romano understands that he stinks right now and he needs to get better. And I do have some good news. He took some accountability for his recent play. And like I said, I'm a big accountability guy. So we're going to go out and listen to Jay Romano's post-game comments from Sunday, because I think it's important that we kind of give the guy a chance, let him explain what's going on, let him explain what he's going to do to try to figure it out. We're going to try to show him a little bit of grace here on the Russ Joy Show. We're going to try. It's like the new thing. We're going to try to show a little bit of grace to a guy when he's struggling. So let's go out to Jay Romano. Not Ray Romano. Let's go out to Jay Romano and hear what he had to say about his performance. Again, 15.75 ERA through 5 games. Jay, what do you have to say for yourself?
The fluctuations.
Yeah.
I know it's there.
No, for sure. Yeah. Usually, I'm used to just kind of being 96 around there the whole time. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know what's going on right now.
His velocity's down. That's very clearly what that's pointing at. He's used to that fastball being around 96, and it's certainly not there. We'll go back out.
But, yeah, I need to figure that out for sure.
Is it frustrating that you're on a new team? You've had a lot of success in the past, but I'm sure you want to make a good impression. Is it frustrating you haven't been able to do that today?
Oh, yeah, definitely. On any team, you want to come in, contribute to wins, and when you're not doing that, it doesn't feel great for sure.
Was it dead arm? Is that possible?
Yeah, you know what?
A little bit hard to hear there. Reporter asks, could it be dead arm? I would hope not. Okay, Jay. Let's see how you answer this one.
I'm not too sure. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's one thing I just got to figure out. I got to get the velo up, because when the velo's right, it helps the slider too. You know what I mean? I feel like when the velo's down, it's easier to take the slider. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember on opening day you said you were a little quick to the plate at the beginning, and then you figured it out, and then your velo kind of shot up. Is that maybe a mechanical thing?
Yeah, it could be. I'm gonna look at some video, really dive in and try to figure this out really quick.
Okay, so there are a few things in there that I like. I like the idea that the guy's going to go back and check film. Whether or not you believe that ultimately matters as much to a pitcher, that's up to you. I like the fact that this guy's not sitting back kind of resting on his laurels and saying like, oh, I've historically been a much better pitcher than this, and I believe that I'm going to be better. Like, I don't want that. I don't need that. No one likes that. No one cares about that. Don't do that. That's one. So good. We at least have a guy who's willing to admit that things aren't going well. The velocity thing is interesting though. So there he is talking about it's easier to lay off the slider if his velocity on that fastball is down. And listen, I just touched on this briefly, but with Aaron Nola, it's still early in the season. He's a starter. You're getting stretched out, all that. If the velocity is not there, you need to have that disparity, right? There has to be that gap between your fastball and some of your off-speed pitches. And if there's not, and you're just relying on some of the movement on the pitch, but you can kind of still time it up as a hitter because everything's within 2-3 miles an hour of each other, that's not good. So Romano is smart to point out that he needs to get his velocity back up on the fastball, because then it's going to make that slider more devastating. All that's fair. I don't know what Rob Thompson can do in the interim, though. Like, you want to give this guy the ability to kind of work his way out of it. And at the same time, just based on how things have gone through 5 games this season with him entering games and getting his ass handed to him, you can't exactly rely on the guy, can you? You can't exactly put the guy in at critical moments at all. Like, is he going to now become like a 6th inning guy? If Taiwan gets through 5, are we going to then see Romano get the 6th? Is Romano going to come in and maybe get the 7th? You know, if you have a multi-run lead, is that how they're going to let him work it out? I guess it kind of is how they're going to have to. But I wouldn't expect him to come in a situation, get a hold or a save anytime soon. It's kind of brutal. And again, when you look at free agent signings and when you look at what this front office did in the offseason, I've been very critical of it. I haven't been quite as critical about the bullpen because I have to be honest with you. I think that bullpens are black magic. Like, I think bullpens are total bullshit. I think very often you can look at a bullpen going into a season and you say to yourself, this is a legit bullpen. This is a shitty bullpen. And what do we know about bullpens? Yes, there are times that you can have an absolutely dominant closer. Yes, there are times that you have a legitimate setup guy and you can at least rely on those two. And then the rest is kind of a mixed bag. You can have times where you have a guy who should very well be a lights out closer. You maybe go out and get him. Estevez. You go out and get that guy, and then he underperforms when he gets here. I didn't, and I'm not going to now revisionist history kill the Phillies front office for not going out and getting a more bona fide arm in that bullpen. However, when you are looking at a race in the National League where a lot of margins are going to be razor thin, whether it's within the NL East, whether it's the National League wild card battle, whether it's even at the top of the National League itself. And again, after the Phillies win 2 or 3 against the Dodgers, you think maybe it's the latter. It's still concerning to feel like there are still so many question marks in this bullpen. Now, if the Phillies bats continue to rake like they have and put up runs the way that they have through, 3 series this season, then by all means, it's great. But eventually those bats are going to kind of come back down to earth. And when they do, you have to be able to rely on your bullpen to hold a lead. Romano, it would behoove him to do whatever it takes to get himself back in shape, to get himself back in form, to get himself back to looking like the guy that Dave Dombrowski thought he was signing. And it obviously would help the Phillies. Now, if this doesn't fix itself, the Phillies, from where I'm standing, they need to be active on the trade market. And like sooner than later. If Romano can't turn this thing around by mid-May, you have to have a legitimate conversation about going out and getting another bullpen arm. And like, listen, he might still figure it out after the fact, and that's great. But you cannot allow yourselves to have a guy that was expected to be a high-leverage guy be anything but. All right, so that's the delightful Jay Romano. See, now we've taken this is twice now on the show today where things have kind of gone off the rails a little bit. It's all because of the Phillies. Phillies pitching. Why do you do this to me? All right, we're going to go back to the comments. Dersh says 10 games in and we're already riding the overhype train, ? I'm not overhyped. I think that, obviously the Phillies beat a Nationals team that have very low expectations, a Rockies team that's going to be horrible. But you do win 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers. That's something that you should be able to hang your hat on, and you should feel really good about that, especially because the Dodgers came into this series unbeaten. So yeah, I'm not saying the Phillies are now the favorites to win the National League, but I am saying Phillies team, they have the ability to go toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in baseball. Hells yeah, I'm going to back them. Jim Cochran says 3 earned runs from Nola against that lineup. I'll take that in October from him. Let's hope that he's able to deliver that in October. Ford is hyped for the national championship game today. Love that Duke lost. Excited for the Florida-Houston game. If you missed, listen, I'm not a big college basketball fan at all. I'm really not a big college sports fan at all. When we get to tournament time, when we get to the college football playoff, that's when I lock into college sports. I got to tell you, I was in on that Duke-Houston game. I started watching, I think, right at the start of the second half, and I was glued to the screen because I wanted to see future Sixer Cooper Flagg. I wanted to see what he was going to look like. I wanted to see how he was going to stack up and how he was going to show out against this Houston team that is very tenacious, a Houston team that never says die. The end of that game is absurd, but I have to thank Houston for pulling off that win, and here's why. My almost 10-year-old does this thing where he speaks with authority on things. His teacher watches the show too, so you could tell him I said this. My almost 10-year-old, okay, speaks on things with a lot of authority. But a lot of times he has no idea what he's talking about. Or he has like a kernel of truth to what he's talking about. That's not that he actively lies about these things. It's just that he hears one thing and he's like, now he's an authority on it, right? So the boys are watching the Sixers game the other night. And the Sixers are down like 5 early or something. And no, sorry, it was a college basketball game. I've done a lot of self-contradicting on this episode. This is not exactly a great thing. I digress. The boys were watching a college basketball game the other night. It was not Duke and Houston. And one of the teams was up on the other by 5 points with like, I want to say 10 minutes left in the game. 5 points with 10 minutes. My almost 10-year-old looks at the 8-year-old and says, 5-point lead in basketball? It's pretty much over. And I looked at him and I'm like, buddy, you could not be more wrong if you tried. He's like, Dad, 5 points is a lot. I'm like, no, that's 2 possessions. And in fact, without a foul, you could still go down the court and take a lead on 2 threes. So no, so basketball is a game of runs. Anything can happen. And then I referenced the Tracy McGrady insane end of a game where they put up 13 points in the last 7 seconds or 7 in the last 13, whatever it was. Tracy McGrady, you look it up. Anyway, I'd say to them, basketball's a game of runs. You never give up. However, it does get a little bit annoying with like a minute or 2 left. Sometimes the losing team starts doing the foul game. And in college, we have the 1-and-1 versus the NBA where it's 2 guaranteed free throws once you're in the bonus. I'm like, it does get a little bit annoying. But there is kind of like a never say die attitude, especially in college basketball. And then served up on a platter is Duke and Houston, where Houston somehow pulls off this miraculous comeback. And after hitting a 3, they force what's almost a 5-second violation. Duke has to call timeout. Duke gets the ball. They aren't able to run along the baseline. They turn it over. Houston attempts a 3, misses, put back dunk. You go down the other way. You come back up. Houston ends up winning the game. And it's a game that they absolutely pull from the jaws of defeat. And it was probably my favorite college basketball I've watched in years, right? And not because there was some incredible buzzer beater like Maryland had earlier in the tournament, but because you had a team that refused to give up. And now, I don't know how tonight's game is going to go, all right? I would not say play any potential idea I throw your way. But I am going to say it's hard for me to envision a scenario where Houston at any point tonight gives up. Now, I know that the opposition is going to be tough. I know that Florida is a damn good team. But I'd have a hard time picking against Houston. I would. There's your little college basketball nugget of the day. Let's see. Now, I took us off on the college basketball thing, and there's a whole bunch of stuff here about Nola, so I can't really do a whole lot there. But Ford says, this weather sucks. T.S. Eliot said, April is the cruelest of months. He's right. I agree. This weather is garbaggio. The fact that we've now gone to rain and 40-something degrees is total bullshit again. I am not a fan. You can't give me almost 70-degree weather, and then there was a day where there was 70-degree plus weather, and then give me back to the 40s. This is not okay. This is not fair. Mother Nature, somebody needs to go give that lady a nice time. Got to pay for a mani-pedi for Mother Nature or something. Boost her spirits. We need the nice warm weather again. I don't like the 40s. I was done with the 40s, and now they're back, and I'm very upset. King Alfred's U.S. descendant says, I still have concerns with the Phillies lineup and Bohm's lack of patience at the plate. Hurry, Aiden Miller, hurry. I just have to say really quick. There have been times this season where I've gotten really frustrated. And you had a 9th inning where, what was it? I don't remember the 3 who came up. Was it Harper, Bohm, and Stott? I don't remember the 3. But you have 3 guys that come up to the plate, and it's the 9th inning of Saturday's game. You have the opportunity to potentially win that game. You had a few things that actually went wrong leading up to that. It was 2-1. Stott gets doubled off of first. So instead of Real Muto scoring and you having a 2-2 game, it's 2-1, and then the Dodgers tack on another home run, right? And then it's 3-1. You get to the bottom of the ninth, and you go, all right, we have the heart of our orders coming up. Harper gets on base off of a kind of wacky hit. So he swings at the first pitch, gets on base. And then the next two hitters go up, and they both swing at the first pitch. And I legitimately, I hadn't even, settled back into my seat from the potty break from the top to the bottom of the ninth. And I go, are you fucking kidding me? Harper gets on base swinging at the first pitch, fine. Can we maybe just see a few pitches? Can we maybe just show a little bit of patience at the plate? Nope. 3 pitches, and the game is over. It was the most perplexing, mind-numbing thing I've seen in a long time, and I have to tell you, it pissed me off something fierce, and then I tweeted about it, and somebody was like, oh, getting really upset about just one inning in a baseball game in a 162-game season. Yeah, because it's annoying. Now, the Phillies went out the next day and drew 11 walks, and that's great. So I guess, maybe somebody got in their ear about taking some pitches. But, when you have the ability to potentially tie the game, especially once Harper gets on base, one swing of the bat, tie game. Swing at the first pitch. Now, in fairness, who's captain swing at the first pitch? Nick Castellanos. What does he do on Sunday? Swings at the first pitch, deposits a grand slam into left field. So, I don't know. I try not to get that frustrated, but the lack of patience at the plate is frustrating. And in a case of Alec Bohm, and I alluded to this earlier, I think Alec Bohm is maybe the most annoying human being on this team. Not because he's a bad guy. I have no idea. But Alec Bohm just doesn't look like a player that belongs with this team right now. He doesn't look like a guy that half the time looks like he belongs on a good team in the major leagues. He could certainly play for a bad team. But man, you look at what this guy was leading up to the All-Star break last year. He looked like a guy who, in fairness, there were people talking about boy, if Bohm can put together a second half of the season that's like his first, could he maybe get some MVP votes? Then everything fell apart. But the first half of last season, he looked like an absolute stud, and he looked like a guy who had taken that next step. And then what do we have to show for it? We have nothing to show for it because Bohm looks lost at the plate. He looks like he lacks serious confidence. And Bohm ultimately looks like a guy who, if you were to sit him for an extended period of time, I'm not exactly sure that you'd miss out on a lot. And all of this is happening while Edmundo Sosa looks like an absolute stellar guy at the plate, plays solid enough defense. I'm having a hard time right now justifying Alec Bohm being in the lineup over Edmundo Sosa. I mean, let's just kind of take it back here. All right. So far this season, the guy has been wonderful. On the season, he is currently hitting .550. Now, is he going to remain hitting .550? Of course not. But Sosa continues to deliver. And I got to tell you, you don't look at Edmundo Sosa as a guy that you need to see hit the long ball. That's not what he's about. But if you were to ask me, game is on the line, you need a guy to get a hit on this team, a guy to put together a good at bat, a guy to deliver in the bottom of the ninth inning. Sosa has to probably be in my top 3. Let me measure this one out. Yeah, he has to be in my top 3 right now in terms of guys that I'd want to see at the plate with the game on the line right now because he just continues to deliver. And so now I guess Rob Thompson is in this weird spot because Sosa had a really good series against the Rockies, and then there was a point where you kind of expected him to be in the lineup the next day, and he wasn't. So far, he's gotten into 6 games, and he's been spraying the ball all around. He's putting together good at-bats. He's delivering exactly what you need. This team, if reports are to be believed, explored multiple trades of Alec Bohm. So we can't turn around and just say the Phillies are totally committed to the guy and that the Phillies believe that Alec Bohm is a long-term piece here. They very clearly don't believe that. So at what point does Rob Thompson have to sit back and say, yeah, now might be the time. Like, now might be the time to make a change, and maybe not permanently, but like ride the hot bat while it's there. I think you have to at least consider it soon. Now, this is an interesting one from Average Warzone guy who says Bohm is Farabee. I think Bohm's highest of highs is significantly higher than Farabee's highest of highs, but there might be a comparison to be made there. That's not a bad comparison. Now, if Alec Bohm were moved, is he going to go blossom and prosper somewhere else? I don't necessarily think so. I don't think he's being held back here. I don't think that like being out of the pressure-filled Philadelphia market is going to change a lot. He's just been kind of brutal. SB Jump over here says, Bohm is playing like shit. Sosa all day. King Alfred's U.S. Descendant says, if the Phillies can trade Bohm for reliable relief pitching, I would start Sosa until Miller is ready. Bohm came across mentally weak in last year's playoffs and doesn't seem to have matured. I have a really, really hard time, again, justifying Alec Bohm getting to play much. I don't see it. Back out to the comments we go. I see some stuff about Ovechkin, so we're going to get there in a little bit. I'll make sure I bring some of those comments up when we get there. Jamie says about the thing with the patience at the plate. Yesterday was a good step in the right direction. They drew 11 walks. Now, granted, Glasgow melted down over some rain, but it's still a good response. It wasn't even rain. It was a mist. It was barely raining. Guy had like grumpy lip. Let's see. I think that might be about where I want to go there. Some other stuff about Nola over here. Let's see. Jamie said the Florida-Auburn game was also exciting. The back and forth was great about the college basketball playoffs over the weekend, the Final Four on Saturday. It was great. Okay. I want to move this conversation forward. There we go. Thank you, Jamie. Glasgow. I said Glasgow, like Glasgow, Scotland. Anyway, I want to go off of the field now. And all of this, the shitty thing here is I had a lot of critical things to say about the Phillies. I won 2 out of 3. Now, I did say Phillies, excellent stuff. But I am going to point out some of the real criticisms of this team. Okay. I'm going to go over to hockey here for a little bit because we talked about baseball. I want to talk about hockey. There were 2 things that happened over the weekend. Now, I'm going to start with the higher of highs. The higher of highs is Alex Ovechkin breaks the all-time goal record. Breaks Wayne Gretzky's record. And there was a big part of me, as I said at the start of the show, that wanted to see Ovechkin break the record at home. Break it in Washington. Why? It is so increasingly rare that you see a player remain with the same team for the entirety of his career. And Ovechkin's done that. I can't think of a single time that there was a legitimate trade rumor around the Capitals wanting to move Ovechkin or Ovechkin wanting to be moved. And in fairness, there have been some down years in Washington. But if you look at this thing on the whole, if you look at Alex Ovechkin's career, and then you think about what he's been able to accomplish at 39 years of age, it is absolutely astounding. It is nothing short of, maybe not miraculous, but the guy was drafted 20 years ago, okay? And I have something here that's not exactly unbelievably critical, but it is kind of important for context. He was drafted 20 years ago, but he hasn't played 20 seasons. Because if you remember, Alex Ovechkin he's been here before. There was a COVID season that cost him the chance to break this record even as early as maybe last year. You just look at that, because I think he played like 48 games or whatever that season. So the COVID year really hurts. The COVID year really screwed things up. Had it not been for that COVID season, I think it's a very realistic conversation that we would have been having late last season or maybe at the very beginning of this season. Does Ovechkin get it done sooner? This guy has been somebody who's remained largely out of the headlines for negative things. He's a guy who within the league is being looked at very positively. He's a guy that a lot of people have very happy, positive stories about. There's the thing that like softened me up on the guy, right? The thing that really did make me smile quite a bit. The thing that made me think, all right, this guy's a legitimate good human being. There was the video that was going around years ago of a girl with special needs that wanted to go to prom, go to the dance with Alex Ovechkin. And he made it happen. And he took her all around, and he made that girl feel incredibly special. And there was just, like, you have to go look for it. I can't pull it up here because I'm sure YouTube will, like, try to take down the whole thing if I use their video. But it was a really great moment, and it showed this, like, real piece of humanity in this guy. And I look at it, and I said at that time, I was like, I can't hate this guy. Could certainly hate Crosby. Can't hate Ovechkin. And in fairness, because the Flyers have been largely irrelevant for quite a long time, at least in terms of trying to win a Stanley Cup, I don't have hatred for the Caps. I certainly don't have hatred for Ovechkin, and I was really happy for him that he broke the record. Now, I said that I wanted to see him break it at home. I think that loyalty is very underrated in this league and in sports in general. And the fact that this guy was drafted 20 years ago and still managed to break this record playing for the same team, I think that's astounding. I mean, in fairness, Gretzky did not play his entire career with the same team. I mean, there is the whole thing about how people say, like, there is no untouchable when Gretzky got traded. That is true. But Ovechkin's done it for the same team. 895 goals. It's astounding. I mean, he had a COVID year that he lost, right? He lost an entire season. He lost a good chunk of a season because of COVID. And then, lest we forget, 2012, 2013, there was a lockout. And so that also impacted his ability to break this record even sooner. So there have been like 2 seasons in his career where he's played fewer than, like, I think the lowest that he's played, the fewest he's played is like 60, like just under 70, like 68. Let me see. In a healthy-ish season, yeah, the fewest games he's played in a season is 68 in 2019, 2020, COVID. And then there was the 45-game season, or he played 45 games in the abbreviated season. And then there was the lockout in 2012, 2013. He played 48 games. If you take those two together, plus all the weird stuff around COVID that happened, that's a full season of hockey. We could have been talking about the goal-scoring record 2 full seasons ago had it not been for COVID and lockout. Ovechkin, to me, is by far the best goal scorer of all time. And it's not recency bias. You think about how, like, the pacing of getting to this goal record. He and Gretzky both hit 894 in the same amount of games, which is great. It certainly, like, helps, even if you can go back and compare, like, the Saquon Barkley trying to break the rushing record and people saying, oh, look at the amount of games he had. If he plays that 17th game, that's going to be unfair to Eric Dickerson. They got the goal scoring record in the same amount of games. I would argue that within an actual season happening, a full season happening during the lockout or even during COVID, and you're very much like already ramped up later in the season, he probably breaks it in fewer games. But that's all ifs and buts. So there's that. Okay. I thought it was a really cool moment. The announcer on TNT was the same announcer that called his first goal. And again, 20 years after being drafted, he breaks what many consider to be an unbreakable record. This is incredible. AJ over on YouTube says, the girl with special needs story. Ovi also tried to get drafted last in the All-Star game to win the pity car they were giving off, to auction it off and give the proceeds to the girls' team. There you go. That's a beautiful thing. Again, you can dislike players on other teams. You can believe in rivalries. You can hate the player, maybe not hate the human being, but hate the player on the other side. I can't hate Ovechkin. I honestly, like, when I watched the game where he tied Gretzky's record, I cheered for him. I was at my buddy's son's birthday party when he broke the record, but I pulled up Twitter because I was just, I was curious to see if he broke it. And when I saw that he did, I let out a very, very audible, yeah! Because I thought it was a really cool moment. And again, to this point, unless somebody has like some kind of very damning story or multiple damning stories about Ovechkin. Guys just seem to be a good dude. That's where I'm at. Okay, let's see. Joshua Gaynor said if it wasn't for the lockout and COVID seasons, he'd probably be chasing 1,000 goals right now. I agree. The crazy thing is, like, so if we're being honest here, good chance he finishes the season with 900 or 900 plus. How many years does Ovechkin have left? Like, goal scorers score goals. Is there a path here to Ovechkin trying to chase 1,000? Like 33 goals per season for the next 3. Does he have it in him? I can't imagine he does. Like, at some point, the legs are going to give out. The body is going to remember how old it is. But, like, could you get to a point where, like, maybe next year he puts together, like, another 40? Could he put together another 40-goal season? Maybe. Could he follow that up with like a 30-ish the next year? Maybe. 2 years from now, could he put together 20? Yeah, I mean, it gets you there the same way. That's actually 90, 40, 30, and 20. 40, 35, 25. I don't know. It would be really cool to be able to say, like, the all-time goal-scoring leader, champion, whatever, has 1,000 goals. There's a real special ring to that. Allison said she was watching it on TV and saw it as it happened. Nick Bott says, good for him. He's in the Putin party, but good for him. Listen, we're not perfect. No one's perfect, right? King Alfred says, the most unbreakable NHL record not held by Gretzky. Most consecutive seasons with 50 or more goals scored held by Mike Bossy. 9 straight seasons with 50 goals. Yeah, that's absurd. And it's funny, too. I'm looking at Ovechkin's numbers right now. He had how many times did he get to 50 plus in a row? So his first season, he had 52, dropped to 46, up to 65, 56, 50. So if he, to start his career, if he had gotten 50 there, that would have been, 6 seasons in a row with 50. He had another stretch, 2013 to 2016, 51, 53, 50. He had another stretch, close but no cigar on the 50s. That's interesting. That's a hell of a stat. Anyway, that was a really cool moment. It had nothing to do with Philadelphia sports, but I thought that it was certainly worth a shout out. Ovechkin breaks what was considered to be practically an unbreakable record. Now, are there other guys in the National Hockey League right now who could maybe make a case that could try to play this longevity game and try to get there? I don't know. I'm not feeling it. I think that Ovechkin was like an otherworldly kind of player, otherworldly kind of scorer. I'd be shocked if anybody that's currently in the league right now gets even within a puncher's chance of getting close to breaking whatever Ovechkin's record ends up being. Because again, unless he wins the Stanley Cup this year and decides to call it quits, which would be kind of insane, but if he gets to 900 plus goals, wins the Stanley Cup, and then retires, that's a hell of a way to go out. Yeah, I don't know. I have to imagine he's going to keep playing, but for how much longer, that remains to be seen. Where is this at? Allison, or no, hold on. It was Average. Average Warzone guy says his rookie season was lost due to the 05 lockout too. So that's 30 goals there at least. That is also true. Correct. Allison says on Houston local news, they announced it and said Alex Ovechkin of the New York Capitals. Ew. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good at all. Okay, that's it for Ovechkin. Now, I had one other thing that I wanted to get to, and it did have something to do with the Philadelphia Flyers. It's a tweet that I put out over the weekend, and it was met with backlash, which I found kind of astounding. Now, there are times where I tweet stuff, and I fully expect that people are going to get upset, or that people are going to think that it's unfair, or who the hell knows, right? And there are people who love different guys on this team and believe they can do no wrong and all that. I put together a tweet. What was a thread? I put together a thread of tweets. Not on Threads. I don't really live on Threads. I think when I post to Instagram about the new episode of this show, it auto-populates to Threads. But I don't know the last time I actually sent out a dedicated thread. Anyway, I just did a little bit of number crunching the other night, and I knew that Konecny hasn't scored a lot for the Flyers. He's racked up some assists here, but the goal scoring has practically disappeared for Travis Konecny. And so I'm going to throw out to this and then probably wrap up the show for today. But just to give everybody an idea, since January 9th, Travis Konecny has 4 goals. 4. I think it's 30 games, 35 games played, 4 goals. Owen Tippett has 8. They're making a combined $11.7 million this season. Next season, Konechny's cap hit jumps. At that point, those two will be making $14.95 million. And that's not just for 1 or 2 seasons. That's for the next 7 seasons. That is a very concerning trend. Tippett has these moments where he skates faster than most of the guys on the ice, has a harder shot than most of the guys on the ice, and then he has these stretches where he can't hit the broadside of a barn. He looks lost, confused on the ice. Konecny plays hard. There have been some murmurs for a while that he may be trying to play through an injury, multiple injuries. 4 goals is really hard. 4 goals over that span of time is really hard to do. Even on a bad team, and I got some pushback from people, well, it's not a very talented team. What do you expect them to do? 4 goals. That doesn't get it done. When you're getting the kind of power play time that he gets, that doesn't get it done. But I continued. I said the good news is maybe Konecny's been playing through an injury, so you'd hope that next year's going to be better. Tippett has these flashes, but when he's off, he's off. The cap's going to keep going up, so the percentage of the cap that's tied up between those players is going to go down. So maybe that's a positive. Bad news is if you lump in Sean Couturier, who has 7 goals since January 9th as well. He's got a $7.75 million cap hit through 2029, 2030. The top 3 forwards are underwhelming on the goal-scoring front. Now, again, Couturier is not a guy that you gave that contract to expecting him to score 35, 40 goals. That's not what he's ever really been. But when your top 3 paid forwards aren't really a threat to put up 40-plus goals, that's truly concerning. And even if you wanted to say, hey, there's a possibility that Konecny could become a 40-goal scorer, you look across the league, there are guys who put up 45, 50, maybe even 60. Your top 3 forwards being very underwhelming on the goal-scoring front, to me, is a legitimate concern. And what I ended that thread with was the Couturier deal looks bad now because of 2 back surgeries, which weren't expected at the time that Fletcher signed him to that deal. The Konecny and Tippett deals, however, were signed by this front office. So they need those 2 guys to bounce back, or they need to consider, is there a trade market in the offseason? Konechny's no movement clause kicks in the summer. I don't think they're going to move him. Tippett, there may be some kind of a market for it, but are you gonna flip and turn and trade him away this soon? I find that also hard to believe, but I don't know. It is concerning, though. Anyway, that's it for the show today. I want to thank everybody who joined me here on the Russ Joy Show. A lot of things that we were able to get to and in and out. Phillies win 2 of 3. Flyers are the Flyers. Ovechkin breaks the goal-scoring record. And, I forgot. There's that one thing that we have to do here because it is just now part of this show. We're going to go over to Tankathon really quick. We're going to do one spin because the Flyers wake up this morning, April 7th, in 5th place because the godforsaken Bruins lost their most recent game. So let's sim it. And the Flyers fall to 6. We're just going to act like that never happened. So, yeah. Flyers are down to the last 5 games of the season. We will remain very firmly fixed to our TVs, our tablets, our phones, wherever, watching them over these last 5 games. Remains to be seen how things are going to go, but it is a very tightly compacted group of teams. The Flyers could really end up anywhere from 4th best odds of winning the number 1 overall pick all the way down to like the 9th best odds. So, yeah. I'll be back on Wednesday here at the Russ Joy Show, 8:30 a.m. on YouTube. You can also find this show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music. Do me a favor, like the video, share the video, subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what you agreed with, disagreed with, and I'll talk to each and every one of you Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a great day, everybody.